December 2025. Los Angeles. Over 130 people detained. 227 arrested. More than 1,200 pounds of fentanyl and methamphetamine seized. The FBI just executed one of the most coordinated multi-agency strikes Southern California has seen this year. They called it Operation Coast to Coast. And what they found inside these illegal gambling dens shocked even veteran agents. This is that story. Before we dive in, if true crime stories like this interest you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. Now let's get into it. To understand what happened in December 2025, you need to understand what was hiding in plain sight across Los Angeles. While families went about their daily lives, an underground network was operating behind closed doors. The FBI had been watching for months. They called them Casitas. In Spanish, it means little houses. But these weren't homes. They were illegal gambling establishments run by Los Angeles area gangs, and gambling was just the cover. Casitas have existed in Southern California for decades, evolving from small underground poker rooms into sophisticated criminal operations. What started as neighborhood gambling spots gradually became something far more dangerous. By the 2000s, street gangs realized these establishments could serve multiple purposes. The constant flow of cash made them perfect for money laundering. The privacy made them ideal for drug distribution. Here's how the modern Casita operation worked. Gang members linked to groups like Florencia 13, MS 13, the Tortilla Flags, and East Side Longos operated these Casitas as gambling venues. Walk in, place a bet, maybe watch a soccer game on the big screen. To a casual observer, it looked like a neighborhood social club. But behind those walls, a different operation was running. Narcotics were being sold. Guns were being trafficked. In some locations, prostitution was taking place. The gambling was real, but it was the least profitable part of the business. These weren't random street dealers. This was organized, and it was connected to something much bigger. Transnational criminal organizations. Groups like the Sinaloa Cartel, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, known as CJNG, and Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan megagang rapidly expanding into the United States. The relationship works like a franchise system for organized crime. The cartels provide the drugs and logistics. The local gangs handle distribution and operations. Everyone gets a cut, and the money flows up the chain, eventually crossing borders and funding larger criminal enterprises. The Sinaloa Cartel has been operating in Southern California for decades. The CJNG is newer but arguably more violent, challenging Sinaloa for control of trafficking routes. Then there's Tren de Aragua. This group started as a Venezuelan prison gang in 2012 and evolved into a transnational organization involved in human trafficking, drug trafficking, extortion, and violent crime. Think about that. Foreign criminal organizations operating gambling fronts in American neighborhoods, funneling cash back across borders, funding more violence, more trafficking. Every dollar bet, every gram sold fed the machine. The FBI knew they had to act. By December 2025, the FBI's Los Angeles field office had seen enough. Assistant Director Akil Davis made the call. It was time for a coordinated surge. Not just one raid. An all-out multi-agency operation hitting every location they'd been monitoring simultaneously. They called it Operation Coast to Coast. Planning an operation this size requires months of preparation. You can't just decide one day to raid 36 locations and arrest over 200 people. It requires intelligence, surveillance, coordination, and legal preparation. The FBI partnered with the Los Angeles Police Department, the LA County Sheriff's Department, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, the Drug Enforcement Administration, Homeland Security Investigations, and other local agencies. Over 1,000 officers were involved. Dozens of task forces, each with specific targets. Surveillance teams had been watching these Casitas for months. They documented who came and went. They tracked patterns. They identified key players. Federal prosecutors prepared 92 criminal complaints, sealed indictments that remained secret until the moment of arrest. They planned 36 separate operations. Some would target Casitas in Montclair and San Bernardino. Others would focus on MacArthur Park, an area that had become notorious for open-air drug dealing. A few operations were designed to apprehend gang members wanted for multiple homicides. The FBI even coordinated with Mexican authorities to execute search warrants across the border. Timing was critical. All 36 operations had to happen within a narrow window. Too much time between raids and word would spread. Suspects would destroy evidence or flee. The element of surprise was essential. One mistake, one leak, and the whole thing could fall apart. Over the past month, Operation Coast to Coast unfolded. In the early morning hours, tactical teams moved into position outside Casitas across Los Angeles County. At Casitas in Montclair, agents executed their warrants. Inside, they found gambling tables, stacks of cash, and in back rooms, kilograms of methamphetamine packaged for distribution. Over 130 people were detained at these illegal gambling establishments across the operation. Agents had to sort through everyone, identify suspects, process evidence, and secure the locations. In Long Beach, alleged members of street gangs including Florencia 13, Tortilla Flags, and East Side Longos were arrested on drug trafficking and firearms violations. At MacArthur Park, more than 10 alleged gang members who had been distributing narcotics around the park were taken into custody. For residents of that area, people who had watched the park deteriorate over years of open drug dealing, this represented hope that things might finally change. The operation also targeted violent offenders. Multiple suspects wanted in connection with gang homicides were arrested. In one case, an individual was arrested for distributing child sexual abuse material. By the time Operation Coast to Coast concluded, the numbers were staggering. Over 227 individuals arrested on federal and state charges. Offenses included homicide, violent crimes, illegal gun possession, narcotics trafficking, crimes against children, and gang activity. 92 criminal complaints filed in federal court. More than 1,200 pounds of fentanyl and methamphetamine seized. 102 kilograms of fentanyl. That's 225 pounds of one of the deadliest substances on Earth. Just 2 milligrams can be lethal. The amount seized could have killed millions. 470 kilograms of methamphetamine, over 1,000 pounds. Also seized, 1.5 kilograms of cocaine, 29 firearms, and approximately $3,000 in cash. 8 search warrants executed, including one in Mexico. For the agents involved, this represented months of work, months of surveillance, late nights, the stress of knowing that if anything went wrong, people could get hurt or killed. Assistant Director Akil Davis said, "This month's surge in resources and partnerships is a snapshot in time of the work our task forces do on a regular basis, but it illustrates for the public the violent crime threat facing our communities." Operations like this happen more often than most people realize. Task forces are out there every single day, tracking threats, gathering intelligence, making arrests. So what happens now? The 227 individuals arrested face federal and state charges. Federal charges typically carry much harsher sentences. Some suspects could be looking at decades in prison. Those connected to homicides or major trafficking may never see freedom again. But here's the uncomfortable reality. This operation targeted Los Angeles. It shut down Casitas. It arrested gang members. It seized drugs and weapons. But the cartels, the transnational organizations funding all of this, they're still operating. The Casitas might be shut down for now. New ones will likely open elsewhere. The gang members in custody will be replaced. The drugs seized represent just a fraction of what's moving through California every week. This is the frustrating reality of fighting organized crime. Criminal organizations are networks. They're hydras. You cut off one head, 2 more grow back. You shut down one operation, another starts elsewhere. You arrest 200 people, the organization recruits 300 more. But that doesn't mean the fight is pointless. Every operation like this disrupts networks. It removes violent criminals from streets. It saves lives by keeping drugs out of communities. Operation Coast to Coast is part of a much larger strategy. Following an executive order from the president, the FBI has been working to eliminate foreign gangs, transnational criminal organizations, and human smuggling rings operating in the United States. Since January 2025, the FBI has participated in over 37,000 operations, resulting in more than 38,000 arrests. That includes 230 members of Tren de Aragua and 120 members of MS-13. Think about those numbers. Over 38,000 arrests in less than a year. That means there were at least 38,000 people on American soil involved in cartel activity, gang violence, and trafficking. And those are just the ones who were caught. The FBI has deployed over 9,000 federal, state, local, and tribal task force officers to combat these threats. They've established coordination centers. They've increased resources in 49 of their 56 field offices. They've built partnerships with foreign governments to track cartel leadership across borders. In September 2025, Homeland Security Task Forces executed 400 multi-agency operations, resulting in over 3,000 arrests and the seizure of 92 metric tons of narcotics. In October, authorities dismantled dark web marketplaces, arresting 270 vendors and administrators selling opioids and other illegal drugs online. This is an ongoing fight, and the battlefield is in our cities, in our neighborhoods. If you've made it this far, drop a comment below. Did you know Casitas existed? Did you realize these cartels were operating gambling fronts in American cities? I read every comment, and I'm genuinely curious what you think about all this. Here's what keeps law enforcement working around the clock. These organizations don't just traffic drugs. They traffic human beings. They exploit children. They smuggle weapons. They launder billions of dollars. They corrupt officials. They destabilize entire regions through violence. Groups like Tren de Aragua are particularly concerning. In December 2025, the Department of Justice unsealed indictments against over 70 Tren de Aragua members for murder, robbery, extortion, kidnapping, and cybercrimes. Some use malware to steal millions. They exploit financial systems. They operate like corporations, except their product is human suffering. MS-13 continues to operate despite decades of law enforcement efforts. The Sinaloa Cartel and CJNG continue to flood American communities with fentanyl, now the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45. But this story doesn't end with despair. It ends with a choice. The FBI, DEA, Homeland Security, and local police are on the front lines every day. But they can't do it alone. They rely on communities being vigilant. They rely on tips from regular people who see something suspicious and decide to say something. Operation Coast to Coast succeeded because months of intelligence, collaboration, and courage came together. Agents risked their lives. Prosecutors built cases. Partner agencies worked together, and informants provided crucial information. But there will be another operation, and another, because as long as these threats exist, the fight continues. So here's my question for you. After hearing this story, do you feel safer knowing these operations are happening? Or does it concern you that these networks are so deeply embedded in American cities? Let me know in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your perspective. And if this opened your eyes to something you didn't know, hit that like button. It helps this story reach more people. 227 arrests, 36 operations, over 1,200 pounds of drugs off the streets, multiple violent offenders in custody, Casitas shut down, communities safer, at least for now. But this is just one chapter. Operation Coast to Coast wasn't about declaring victory. It was about fighting, about refusing to let criminal organizations operate unchecked, About reminding the cartels, the gangs, the traffickers that law enforcement is watching, and they're not stopping. Because the moment we stop fighting, that's when the cartels win. That's when neighborhoods get overtaken by violence. That's when kids grow up seeing gang members as role models. The fight continues, and it's all of ours.